I think that I'm going to wear the polka dotted dress with some black tights, and I think I'm going to do my hair in 2 braids and then coil it on top of my head. That sounds great. And that's our little ritual.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast, the podcast all about banjos and the people who love them. I'm your host, Keith Billick. Thanks for joining me. And hold on to your Stetson open road hats, everybody. Joe Newberry is in the house. And by house, I mean a small cottage. This interview was actually recorded at the Great Lakes Music Camp on the site of Camp Blodgett along Lake Michigan. A beautiful site for a great camp and a nice, cozy cottage atmosphere to do a banjo podcast interview. But before I get to the actual interview, you regular listeners know that I always have to give a special thanks to the folks that make this show possible. And I'm talking, of course, about my VIP, very important picker Patreon supporters. And today we have 2 Patreon supporters of the episode. The first one is Matthew Atkinson. And Matthew is good at chiming in, sending me messages about good guest suggestions. And he even mentioned that he'd like to hear more Clawhammer episodes. Well, I didn't plan it this way. I thank my patrons in order, and it just so happens, Matthew, that you're going to have a great Clawhammer episode in store for you right now. So thank you so much for your support of the show. The other extra special supporter of this show is Carol Rahak from Wisconsin, and she started playing banjo back in the 70s, but gave it a long break until about 7 or 8 years ago when she picked it back up. Well, welcome back to the banjo world, Carol. And as coincidence would have it, Carol was a student back at the Great Lakes Music Camp where I was teaching, and she wants to give a shout out to her fellow Chicks with Picks banjo campers. That's Laura and Barb. So Carol, Laura, Barb, and of course, Matthew Atkinson, thank you for your support of the show. And I don't even think I dropped the link. How you support the show is you go to patreon.com/banjopodcast. You get to keep the lights on here at Picky Fingers HQ, and you receive amazing rewards in return. You can go read all about that. Once again, patreon.com/banjopodcast. The other ways to support the show, don't forget to check out the Picky Fingers merch at banjopodcast.com. You can pick up your world-famous Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast t-shirts and stickers. And, of course, that all goes to support the show when you do that. So you can look good, play good, and feel good for contributing to the, the global banjo cause. And of course, you can always like, rate, review, share, subscribe, all the social media things that helps the algorithm. That is something that is very helpful and very easy to do. So if you're seeing episodes or posts come up, feel free to share those or like them or subscribe or whatever you got to do. It's all super helpful and totally appreciate it. You can also email me at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com with your suggestions, questions, comments, and concerns. One more quick note for those of you hearing this early enough, I will also be hosting an after-hours video meetup for Banjo Summit this weekend. That's February 11th and 12th, 2023. You can go to banjosummit.org, read about the all-star faculty, which includes B.B. Bowness, Wes Corbett, Matt Flinner, Adam Larrabee, Greg List, Jamie Stone, Jens Kruger, Jake Blunt, a whole bunch of your favorites and mine. And like I said, I'm hosting the After Hours video meetup. So if you sign up at banjosummit.org, make sure to use coupon code PICKYFINGERS to get 10% off your enrollment. And come hang out with me Saturday night, take some cool classes, and I hope to see you all there. Today's featured guest is Joe Newberry. Joe is a world-renowned singer, songwriter, banjoist, and guitarist. He has won multiple IBMA awards for his songwriting and was a frequent guest on Prairie Home Companion. I have had the pleasure of seeing Joe around at plenty of camps, whether it's Midwest Banjo Camp, Great Lakes Music Camp, or various other places. And he is not just a captivating performer, but he is a captivating speaker. He is one of these guys with a quiet confidence and wisdom about him that just gives you the vibe of when Joe Newberry is speaking, you should probably be listening, because he's got a lot of great advice, great stories, and thought-provoking wisdom, a lot of which he will share for you here. So give a warm Picky Fingers welcome to Joe Newberry. All right, well, Joe, it's a pleasure to see you. As always, I've been seeing you around at these camps, so I'm thankful we finally have a chance to chat, and especially for this great setting and group of people that we find ourselves here with.
I have been looking forward to our conversation and the hang, and what a beautiful location.
Yeah.
We're at the Great Lakes Music Camp, and just so grateful that Jason Wheeler and his crew have invited me to come and teach songwriting here, but also playing the banjo.
Yeah, as I keep saying, I'm just happy to be included, however that ended up happening, because it's one of my favorite weekends of the year.
I feel like Minnie Pearl. I'm just proud to be here.
Exactly, me too. So let's get everyone started. Introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you became a banjo player.
I'm Joe Newberry. I grew up in a singing family in southern Missouri. Banjo came to me when I was in my late teens. Banjo in Missouri was not as much of a side instrument as other instruments. I remember asking Art Galbraith, the older fiddler down in the James River country, I said, "Mr. Galbraith, what kind of banjo playing do you like?" And he looked at me and he said, "Quiet."
Is that a thing? Quiet banjo playing?
I think Mr. Galbraith meant none at all.
Oh, okay.
But when I was a young man, I moved to North Carolina. I didn't move as much as I just drove out to visit a friend of mine, and my car broke down.
And you never made it back?
I wish I had a more inspiring tale of my life, but yes, that's it. My car broke down, and
that's a pretty romantic kind of story.
There's just a bunch more old-time banjo playing in North Carolina and Southwest Virginia.
Yeah.
And, when you're in your early 20s, you can turn your life on a dime, and I did. And so I've been there ever since.
You described your family as a singing family. I take that to mean that they weren't also playing instruments, that wasn't a part of it? Or
my grandfather Newberry could play anything by ear.
Wow.
My mother's people were more singers and dancers. My dad's family mostly sang the old Ozark songs, but they'd also sing play party songs. They'd sing songs on the hit parade. They'd sing silly church songs. We just sang. And
you were included in all that too?
Oh yes. Okay. From the time I was 5, I remember singing with my family. And I remember going on my first car trip with another family, my friends, the Malls, my best friend, Billy Mall. And I'm riding in the back of the car, and I'm thinking, well, when do we start singing?
Why aren't they singing?
Why aren't they singing? Because we always sang, holidays. I've tried to do that with my family. Huh. We sing. Sometimes we'll get through all the verses of something. Sometimes just a single verse. Mm-hmm. When my father had enough eggnog, he would sing in English and in Latin.
Huh.
Adeste.
Interesting.
Fidelis. Yeah.
But only when he had the
proper amount,
the liquid memory,
eggnog, liquid memory. Yeah, okay. That's right.
So it wasn't until after you landed yourself inadvertently in North Carolina that were you attracted to the banjo before that?
Oh, I played the banjo in Missouri.
Okay.
When I was in college, I lived at a coffee house. Now, I know a lot of people will say, "Oh man, I just lived at that coffee house." I lived at a coffee house. I was one of 7 student managers at the Shea Coffee House in Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah.
And out of the 7 of us, 6 of us were old-time musicians.
Wow.
And so I started playing banjo there. I remember having real trouble with the clawhammer motion. I couldn't get it.
The bum ditty?
It always, whenever I teach banjo, I remember not being able to do it. And so when I teach banjo, I don't use the phrase or the word just do this. Because I remember. And I would also, the first guy that I learned from, I would try my best, and it would be like, and I'd go up and I'd say, "Is that it?" And he would say, "No, no, 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 no." And it's like, oh. So when I started teaching, I remembered hearing that response. And you know how you vow things, or you say, "Oh, I'll never do that." I will never do. Oh, no, 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 no. Because the music's all in here, and you just have to let it out.
I think it definitely gives you a different perspective when you've picked up something as an adult, where it's in exactly what you said. It's in your memory, having the challenge of learning something, where if you were a kid, you've just always done it. And
I can't agree. I can't agree more. It's children are fearless on instruments, and so when I teach adults, I try and make them comfortable with accessing the 7-year-old part of themselves, because a 7-year-old is afraid of nothing. An adult, you'll show them something. Try this, and they'll try that, and then they'll sit here like this, hands on. Okay, what's next?
Yeah, right.
And if I can get somebody, a student, to access that adventuresome part of themselves, then we're on the way. Adult learners want to be good at something right away. I've been working on this for 4 minutes.
Yeah, we're running out of time
Come
here.
on. I was teaching in a classroom setting in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it was a wide range of kids, and there were about 7, maybe 7 or 8. And I showed them all of the instruments I brought. I brought the fiddle, I brought the mouthbar, I brought the guitar. And I said afterward, after I was done with my presentation, I said, you can try any of these instruments. You have to pick them up like you were holding your baby brother or your baby sister. Right. And there was this one little African-American boy, and I said, well, son, what do you want to try? And he said, I just got to get my hands on that banjo.
Yeah, I love it.
And so I gave him my banjo, and he sat down, and the banjo was big, but sure. I said, now, do you remember the motion, the bum diddy? And he said, like this. And I thought, oh, well, is it like a hillbilly potlatch? Do I give him the banjo now? Because It was like, he obviously deserved it. I've often wondered if he kept music in his life, or if he has music in his life. I hope so. He's probably in his late 20s now. This was a long time ago.
Yeah, I hope so too. So how did your progression go? You said you lived with all these old-time musicians at this coffee house. Were you approximately the same level in your progress? Like, were you learning together, or was it just kind of a ragtag bunch situation?
I started playing guitar when I was 14 to accompany my family songs.
Yeah.
But when I was 15, I was at the Boone County Fair in Columbia, Missouri, and I'm walking across the fairgrounds. And I have a picture made that day, the day my life changed. There's a picture of me riding on a ride, and I've got my arms outstretched, and so I got off that ride, and I walked across the fairgrounds, and I heard fiddle music. And imagine a swivel. I swiveled. And I walked to the tent where the Boone County Fiddle Contest was taking place, and I walked through the door and into my future.
And what was it that you were hearing?
I heard some of the greatest fiddlers in central Missouri, which means some of the greatest fiddlers in the world. competing against each other.
Yeah.
And we called them the Five, or not we, everybody called these fiddlers the Five. There were 5 places in a fiddle contest, and they would sometimes...
the finalists.
They're finalists, always the finalists. There was Taylor McBain and Pete McMahon and Jake Hockmeyer and Gene Wells.
Okay.
And George Morris, George Morris's son. Anyway, the 5 were there.
Yeah.
I started going to sessions, and I started playing guitar. And so as I got older, folks started choosing me to back them up on guitar.
Yeah.
The great mid-Missouri fiddler, Pete McMahon, his wife came up to me at a fiddle contest, and he's sort of lurking in the back, but she was the emissary, and she walked up and she said, "He likes your playing."
That's as good of a compliment as you're going to get from him, probably.
So she said, come by the house.
Yeah.
So I went to the house and went to the back door, as you do in Missouri. And so she opened the door and she said, "He's in there." And she motioned to the living room. And I walked into the living room, and he's sitting on the couch already, and there's a chair in front of him. And he doesn't say anything, and he just takes his bow and he points to the chair. So I got my guitar out, and I'm playing. He launches into a tune. It could have been Marmaduke's Hornpipe. It could have been, but it was I remember it was a D tune.
Okay.
It might have been Liberty, Anyway, he gets done. He starts another tune, and we play 4 or 5 tunes. And the only thing he said the whole visit was, "I see you like a dirty ball cap. I like a clean ball cap." And that was it. And then he started playing again. And so after about 4 or 5 more tunes, he got up and walked out of the room, and Miss McMahon came in and she said, "Oh, honey, he had a good time. He had a good time." So I got invited back, but I stopped at the MFA store and I bought a new ball cap.
Oh, he literally meant ball cap. I thought this was like a metaphor.
No,
I'm wrinkling my...
Life is full of metaphors,
Yeah.
but in this case, I had the grossest. We all took pride in our dirty ball caps.
Yeah,
sweat stained and dirt all over. And so "I see you like a dirty ball cap. I like a clean ball cap."
Yeah.
And so I did. I stopped at the MFA store. And I knocked on the back door, and he answered the door this time, and I had left the tag on dangling.
So he knew that.
So he knew it was a
freshy,
clean new ball cap, and he looked at me and he grinned and he said, "Get in here," and we were fast friends after that.
So you're kind of blowing my mind, because I'm wondering if this whole episode is like foreshadowing to your excellent hat choices in life, and like did that maybe impact your? I don't know.
I will tell you that I brought a number of clean ball caps on this trip. I cannot abide a dirty ball cap now. I
won't show you mine then.
No, it's just for me. You be you.
Okay.
Because you're the only you that's you, and I celebrate that.
And the world is better for it.
I tell people all the time, there's only one of me, and I ain't we glad.
Yeah.
But my grandfather and my dad. They wore Stetsons, open road Stetsons, and so I wear them, and they're just they're a really nice looking hat. I keep them nice. I don't grab them by the crown. Hat wearers do not grab your hat by the crown at the top. Your fingers will get them dirty. Grab them from the side.
Excellent. Well, we're going to talk more about that later, but
yeah, I can nerd out on hats for a long time. Maybe a separate podcast for that.
Well, is there a hat podcast? There must be. If not,
sure there is.
Good idea for folks. So you took us on a sidebar about your guitar playing. Going back to your banjo style, what kind of influences did you have back then, and how did you develop the way you play that we get to hear now?
Some of my first influences were people my age that lived in and around Columbia, Missouri. Our dear and sadly departed Kathy Barton. went to high school with Kathy.
Really? I never knew that.
And I lived with her husband, Dave, at the coffee house. So I've known Kathy most of my life. I've known Dave since I was 19. I stood up in their wedding. We've been friends for 45
Yeah, she's a wonderful player.
years. Sadly missed.
Yeah.
Joel Zimmer was another guy who lived around there. Jim Ruth. Those were people about my age, maybe a little older. Then down in Arkansas, Book Miller Shannon was a great banjo player who lived near Mountain View, Arkansas. My friend Jim Lansford lived in Arkansas and Missouri.
Now, I'm as you know, I'm more of a three-finger banjoist, so I'm much less versed in definitely like regional styles. So was there an aspect of that Ozark style that you think I have to imagine you've integrated that.
I absorbed some of it, but I'll tell you, Ozark fiddling is a little different than Central Missouri fiddling, and I tend to react to the fiddler. So Ozark fiddling is a lot more saw strokes to me. Down at Bob Holt down in Ava, Missouri.
Okay.
So there's more of a gallop to the banjo. When I moved to North Carolina, that slippy slidey style that Fred Cockrum and Kyle Creed would play was an influence. But I started out trying to put as many notes in a banjo tune as I could. And then I spent the first 20 years I tried to do that. And the rest of the time I've tried to take notes out.
I would love to trick you into letting us hear some of these things that you're talking about. You described that you were imitating more the fiddle style at first and less of the slippy, slidey North Carolina Kyle Creed style. What do those sound like? And in what ways did you react to the fiddlers more so than, say, take influences from other banjo players?
I'm tuned in a double D, but with the fifth string down. I've been playing a lot. Cousin Emmy, and she was from Kentucky, but she was more of a gallop banjo player. She was not a real notey banjo player. She was the person that told Louis Marshall Jones before he was grandpa.
Oh,
Louis, I think you ought to try the banjo because I think that it would add to your show. And she showed Grandpa his first banjo.
Oh, that's great
music. But
I mean, that's just a universal truth. If you add
it
banjo,
will add to your show. But if putting the banjo in the context of the gallop or just the straight claw hammer, there's a lot of music that. Now,
and that's what you describe as more the gallop
more of
style.
A gallop, more based out of the clawhammer motion.
Yeah, sure.
Adding a little more notey. Sure. Good old Arkansas Traveler, best tune ever written. But I love sounding like me, and that's what I think everybody should work toward, is just sounding like me. I've got a lot of influences from lots of places. I do finger pick. I know just enough three finger to get me thrown out of a good bluegrass session. I will say that I like playing with bluegrass folks. I think that in the last 15 years or so, there's been a real movement and a bridge where bluegrass players and old time players are starting to appreciate the other's style a lot more. I remember in the old days, it was, people would think, oh, he plays old time because he's not good enough to play bluegrass. Huh. I have two words to answer that. Adam Hurt.
one of my favorites. Yeah.
I'll put Adam up against any player in the world.
Agreed.
I was at Mount Airy Fiddlers Convention. One time I was up on the hill playing in an old time session.
Yeah.
And the session was in A. So I was tuned in A, and I was walking down back to my campground, and there was a huge, like, freight train bluegrass session going on, and they were in A. So I thought, whatever.
Yeah.
So I pull out my banjo, and I'm picking along, and this guy came over to me, and he had a Winston 100 hanging out of his mouth.
Okay.
And he says, "Take one, Claw."
A solo?
Yeah. So Claw took one. Claw. So I did all right.
All right. And and no one booted you out of there.
No.
Cool. You mentioned a minute ago that you just wanted to focus on playing like you. So what does that mean to you? What are the aspects of your playing style that you feel like you focused on?
I like low drones. I like doing pull-offs.
Yeah, let's hear all of this if you don't mind. I would love to hear it.
There's one I've been working on a little bit with Mr. Compton called Farewell Princeton, and it's from Clyde Davenport. The first part sounds like water to me. It just ripples. And I work a lot off of the open strings, noting the second fret and the fifth string. Yeah, I just felt myself go a little slack-jawed, which is one of the things about playing banjo. It's like it.
Well, that's why you keep the beard, right?
That's exactly right.
So
that's exactly right. Yes, sir.
Hey folks, just need to take a quick break to tell you all about my good friends up in Lansing, Michigan at Elderly Instruments. Now, you might be thinking that with Elderly's amazing selection and their fast worldwide shipping, that they are some big box conglomerate store. But no, Elderly has been family owned since 1972, and they pride themselves on giving you the customer service and personal touch that only a mom and pop store can give you. So the next time you need anything for your banjo, guitar, violin, mandolin, any stringed instruments, accessories, instructional materials, and I'm talking about whether you're looking for a beginner instrument or even a high-end, vintage, hard-to-find item, Elderly's going to have you covered. It's my first place that I go. So check them out at elderly.com, and don't forget to let them know that the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast sent you. This podcast is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, a site that brings you streaming video courses in banjo, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, dobro, upright bass, and ukulele. You can learn bluegrass, old time, and plenty of other roots music styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in the world. Now, some of what Peghead Nation offers is a great lineup, of course, of banjo instruction. Check out these courses: Beginning Banjo with Bill Evans, Bluegrass Banjo with Bill Evans, Clawhammer Banjo with Evie Layden, Wade Ward Style Banjo with Bruce Molsky, The Banjo According to Danny Barnes, and Contemporary Bluegrass Banjo with Wes Corbett. Now, regardless of what course you choose, you're going to get high-quality multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation and tab, play-along tracks, and plenty of tunes to play. Now, perhaps the best part of all this is that just by being a Picky Fingers podcast listener, you are going to get your first month free. Just go to pegheadnation.com and use the promo code PickyFingers at checkout. That's PickyFingers, all lowercase, all one word, over at pegheadnation.com.
I definitely notice with both your banjo and your guitar playing, you have a very assertive style. And I don't know, I'd love to hear where you think that comes from, or what brought about that quality, or do you even agree?
Thank you for saying assertive rather than aggressive.
Well, right.
Because
It's not malicious.
No, but banjo can be. It can. I tell people I've brought my banjo. I know that sounds more like a threat.
Yeah.
But I like the notion of doing something, playing banjo that's not always. It can be assertive but not aggressive. Mm-hmm. I lead the beat. The fiddlers I like lead the beat, and by that I mean if you think of the beat like a chair, you can sit square up in the chair, and play square on the beat. If you move to the edge of the chair, it's not rushing, but it's placing your emphasis a little bit ahead, just leading the beat a little bit. Yeah. When I'm teaching banjo classes, and I tell folks, you come upon a session at a festival in the dark, and it's really exciting, and you hear there's almost like a little buzz. A lot of that is where everyone is leading everyone's sitting on that front edge of the beat. It's exciting to me.
It's a ride, yeah.
It is a ride.
Just got to hold on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you've said that maybe you've been more accepted within some bluegrass units, or when you talk about, and I'm forgetting the guy's name who was impressed with your guitar playing, I think that's likely the quality that got you those compliments.
Well, hi, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
You bet.
But I like using the banjo as an accent for singing as well. And so, cousin Emmy, she played this in a different tuning. I have been experimenting with. It's just pretty.
Yeah.
If you miss the train I'm on, count the days that I've been gone. You can hear the whistle blow 100 miles. Graveyard, graveyard. You can bury me in some lonesome graveyard. Here we go. When I die, don't bury me at all. I said when I die, don't bury me at all. You can pickle my old bones in alcohol. Graveyard, graveyard. You can bury me in some lonesome graveyard. If I die a railroad man, you can bury me in the sand, so I can hear old number 9 as she goes by. Graveyard, graveyard. You can bury me in some lonesome graveyard. Oh, aren't you kind? Aren't you kind?
Well, that's beautiful. I can see why you're drawn to that, and I see what you mean about exactly what you said, using the banjo to accent the vocal on that. Well, maybe that's an interesting segue. I know this is a banjo podcast, but it would be a shame to not ask you a bit about your songwriting, which is, of course, an important thing to you. You do it at the highest level, award-winning level. So I'm not a songwriter myself, so I'm not sure I have deep, intelligent questions to ask, but you are here teaching classes about songwriting. So I imagine you have some sort of way of describing what you do, your approach, and maybe even just advice for people who would love to improve their own songwriting.
When I write songs, I listen for phrases that other people say. When I teach these courses, I'll give people silent lunch. And they don't have to be mute, but I want them to listen because they'll hear a phrase, they'll hear a hook. Because people say cool things all the time. I shared that a friend of mine brought his wife some flowers home one night, and he wasn't in trouble. It wasn't her birthday. He just saw some pretty flowers, and he brought her flowers. Uh-huh. And the next morning, she said, "Oh, you made my day last night." What a great turn of phrase.
Yeah, I love that.
I just, I heard Doc Watson, he said, he was talking about getting older, as all musicians do. And he said, well, I'm too old to drive the train, but I still love to hear the whistle blow.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to write that down?
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah. There's just something about it that's poignant, even if you can't quite put your finger on why it
real.
Connects. Yeah.
It's real. And that I'll do exercises where I will have songwriting students write for about 10 minutes without really lifting the pen from the paper and get, it bypasses the governor. I don't want them to backspace. I don't want them to think, oh, I shouldn't write that. That doesn't sound good.
Mm-hmm. And is there a prompt involved in this? Or
I usually will ask people to write about the day or their time getting to the camp.
Okay.
And it's always astounds me how hard people work to get out of town and come to something like a camp. Mm-hmm. So their days are filled with getting all the, getting the animals fed, making sure the kids are at the grandparents' house, making sure that they've brought enough warm clothes for the wind off the
the task list.
So there, and what happens is when people write that and they don't backspace and they don't stop to think, oh, that doesn't sound very good. People lie to themselves even in their diaries. Mm-hmm. I want to bypass that. And when it happens, then truth comes out. And when truth comes out, that's a great place to start a song.
So you have a phrase like "You made my day last night." Where do you go from there? Do you have like a notepad where you have this repository of those phrases?
I have notepad upon notepad. I have sound files. Used to be when I was on the road, you don't want to write stuff down while you're driving, so I would call the answering machine. Yeah. And so I'd get home from a tour, and there'd be like 20 messages if I'd been writing a lot.
Yeah, and so I don't know. Just I would love to even go further. Just take us through the next steps. Like once you have that phrase, how do you? It's still not a song at that point. So how do you sculpt that into whatever the final result might be?
Often what I'll do I'll just noodle something. I'm looking outside right now and I'm seeing the wind in the trees. I can comment on that.
Mhm.
The wind in the trees blows your love to me. I sit alone and I feel your breeze. They're just words, but it sometimes a phrase will come to you. Sometimes you can write a song because you need to write a song. I used to do theater a lot, and writing songs in plays is usually to advance the narrative, where if you would have page after page after page of dialogue, or you can write a song and you can advance the narrative very quickly. So let's you and I write a little something.
Oh, no.
Fear not, for behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, which shall be to all songwriters. So my buddy Jim Watson would say, now there's two types of songs. There's songs about being home and songs about being away from home. When you're away from home, you want to be home. And when you're home, you want to be away from home.
Right.
So are we home or away from home?
Well, in a literal way, we're away from home, but in a metaphorical way, we might be home.
So are we home or away from home?
We're home.
I look for little nuggets, and they could be either musical nuggets, something that really sticks with you, or it could be a word. And so the word home, 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 I miss my home, never more to roam, oh, I'm going home. So building on that, I left my home when I was young to see the things to see. I went far and I went wide, but I kept your love with me. I'm going home, I'm going home. That is where I'll stay. I just have the days left me, then I'll go away.
Yeah, fascinating. Can everyone else do that? It's not just me? Like, that's awesome.
It's working this weekend with the songwriting folks that I've been working with. I gave them the exercise of it's a song that I wrote, a farewell song to my students, whom I fall in love with them, and I will miss them when I'm not with them. So I gave them the exercise of farewell, dear friends. I bid you peace. The time has come for us to part. Your loving ways give my soul ease, and I will keep you in my heart. And so they're writing their own goodbye verse, and we'll do it at the student concert.
Oh, I can't wait for it.
I've been doing this for 7 or 8 years, and so I've got probably over 100 of these verses that I've collected. And at some point, I'm going to do, maybe I ought to do a songwriting podcast about all of the verses. It's pretty astounding what people come up with.
Yeah.
So, but when you get in that groove where you've got the template, da 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 da, you've got that template, you can write to it. So once you figure that out, they're just words. And if you don't have the right word, you can figure out a new word. You know, I told folks this morning, Paul McCartney's song Yesterday, he knew he wanted to have that da-da-da, that rhythm.
Yeah.
But he didn't know what it was going to be. And so as a placeholder, he sang Scrambled Egg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to be completely off topic, that Beatles show that came out last year,
Oh, my
seeing
Lord.
the progress of the lyrics.
Watching him pull that song out of nothing
Yeah, what
was
is it? Is it Get
astounding.
Back?
It was Get Back.
Yeah. And yeah, you see it morph before your eyes, and how different the song could have been at any point. Yeah.
And watching they were tight as brothers. They fought a lot, but they were tight as brothers. And the thing that came out of that show for me was how much they loved each other. Mm-hmm. And Paul is there, and he's riffing. He's riffing on a bass, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And George and Ringo are there. Lennon's not there yet. George and Ringo are there, kind of smoking and drinking tea. And at some point, something Paul McCartney does, both of them sit up. It's like they were drawn up like a puppet on a marionette. They sat straight up and they went like, oh. And then they engaged. And
before then, they were kind of
just like, oh,
idly
God.
sitting by.
Sitting,
right?
and oh, well, Paul's doing one of his Paul things. And then he did a real Paul thing, and they went like, okay, we should pay attention to this. Yeah. And that's something about not only writing songs, but playing music, playing instruments, is that when you have inspiration, you don't ignore it.
Yeah.
Don't ignore it.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk about your musical collaborations. You've done a lot of them, and like two of your main acts that you perform with are duos. There's April Verch and Mike Compton, but you've done plenty of others through your career. I'm wondering, Compton and Verch seem like pretty different types of partners, but I'm wondering, is there a common thread that you look for in people that you collaborate with that maybe isn't apparent just based on these two seemingly very different types of musicians?
I look for heart. Both of them have tremendous heart in their playing. Both of them are masters of their genre. I learn something from both of them every time I go on stage. I've played in lots of bands, and I love my old bands.
Yeah.
But I love the duo form because there's no place to hide.
No.
And you have to have complete trust. And that's the thing that I have with both of the duos. I trust them both implicitly. Compton and Newberry, Mike and I started playing because I used to run the Augusta Heritage Old Time Week. Mm-hmm. And I had been looking for someone to come teach old time mandolin. Mike came, he was going to teach that in 2009 in the summer. Mm-hmm. So we'd been talking on the phone, and I, of course, knew who he was. My goodness, he's Mike Compton from the Nashville Bluegrass Band, for pity's sake. And I had a friend cancel on doing a show in Charlotte, and so I called Mike, and I said, would you want to come do a show with me in Charlotte? And there was not even a pause. He said, yes, sir. And so we met in Charlotte. We got together about an hour before the show and put together 2 sets of music. I play this. Oh, I can play this. Oh, I can sing on that.
Yeah, the typical scrapping together a set list. Yeah.
And when we started playing in front of people, I saw the audience. I mean, we see everything.
Sure.
We see how the audience reacts. And people were looking around and each other as if to say, well, I thought these guys didn't play together. Because the blend that you hear us now with, it was the blend that we had.
It's peaches in the summertime and apples in the fall. If I don't get the one I love, I won't have none at all. I'm gonna rock the island and go, honey, ho. See my candy darling, you know I love her so. Well, I went to see my gal last night, the dress she wore was red.
And so we both said, well, we should do this again. We've been doing that since 2009. Yeah. Now, with April Verch, she and I had a mutual friend who kept saying to me, you should play some with Verch. And at the same time, she was saying to Verch, you should play some with Newberry.
Yeah, good.
And so Compton was on an Australia run for a couple of months, and I needed to do some fill-in work. And so I got in touch with April and said, would you like to would you like to put together some music? And she had some time in her schedule. Mm-hmm. And again, we started playing, and from the get-go, our music just fit, but we didn't realize how much fun it was going to be to sing together.
My girl shines brighter than the moon, or the stars or sun. The harvest here will be done soon. It's 6 months I've been gone. I'm going back to Jericho. I'm going back to Jericho. See that girl I love so, Jericho. From my darling one, set my heart a whirl.
And so I tell people I'm in my two favorite duos.
Yeah.
I'm in my two favorite duos.
Yeah, they're both fantastic.
And we were at a camp a few years ago, and April and Mike and I did a little show together.
A trio.
Holy cow, was it fun. Oh, yeah.
Are we going to hear recordings of this anytime?
There's some stuff online of us all playing together. It's pretty fun.
I'll have to check that out for sure.
It steps up and goes pretty good.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, what do you think it is about yourself that makes you a good collaborator for others that they would look for?
Oh, gosh. You're expecting me to say nice things about myself, but
I'm hoping.
I've been preaching all week to accept the nice things. So here's, I think that I have very open ears, and my job is to make the person I'm playing with sound better or play better. Yeah. And I do that well. I'm a good collaborator in that way. I play my instruments. I get out what I need to get out. I love to sing. I'm a good singer, and I love to sing harmony. So that's probably what they see.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
Plus, I know where all the good places to get coffee are, and this is important.
Ooh, yeah. Let's go back to the hats.
Yes,
and the aesthetic. Anyone who has encountered you knows that you have, the Joe Newberry brand. Your aesthetic is part of that feature. I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about what it means to have an aesthetic as a performer that you go for, and what your look, how it plays into your professional performance.
When one performs in public, you have to make sure that people feel comfortable, like somebody knows what they're doing. They know what to expect. I started wearing those Stetson hats on stage because I don't have any hair, and I don't have anything to soak. I mean, I don't have anything to soak it up. When you are doing a show, you get a little bit glowy, and so I started wearing Stetsons. I will tell you that it becomes a little terrarium under there if you. So I keep the hat on, but also people see me in a vest and a white shirt and a Stetson hat, and they know it's me.
Yeah.
I was at one of those roadside pull-off, like in the Northeast, you have service areas is what they call them, I guess. And I was there getting some snacks, and was going to play a festival a couple of hours north, and I was standing in line, and a guy came up and he said, "Are you Joe Newberry?" And I said,
"You already had the duds on."
And I said, I am. How did you know? And he pointed from my head to my feet, and he went, I mean, so it worked. Branding worked.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike wears his signature overalls, and he'll wear either a nice traveling Stetson hat, or sometimes he'll wear a ball cap, but he's always got the pressed overalls and a clean, beautifully starched iron shirt. It's funny, when April and I are playing, we have everybody's got your rituals when you play, and April will say, "I think that I'm going to wear the polka dotted dress with some black tights, and I think I'm going to do my hair in 2 braids and then coil it on top of my head." And I'll say, "I think I'm going to wear a pair of black trousers and a white shirt and a vest and a Stetson. And she'll say every time, "That sounds great."
Yeah.
And that's our little ritual.
Well, one fewer decision that you need to make almost every day of your life. That's cool.
Exactly
You've
right.
solved that.
That's exactly right.
So this is where I don't know if we mentioned this part, but we actually have, this is rare for the podcast. We have an audience, the capacity crowd at the cottage here at Great Lakes Music. So this is everyone's does anybody have anything that you would like to ask Joe Newberry? This is your chance. Anyone?
Or collaborate with a partner, a spouse, a girlfriend.
Not other than them serving as a muse. I don't usually write.
Let's talk about your banjo itself. Tell us what your instrument is and who made it, and all the things that banjo nerds like to hear about, bridges and heads and whatever you got to say about it.
Okay, so I'm gonna move my glasses over to the side because I'm a banjo nerd out for a minute. I play a banjo that was made for me by Kevin Enoch in 1997. It is an 11-inch head. It's a black lacquer neck with a black pot with tortoiseshell binding around the pot and the neck. It has a Renaissance head. When I started playing with Jim Watson, Bill Hicks, and Mike Craver, the fellows who started the Red Clay Ramblers, I had been playing a fiberskin head for a long time. Mm-hmm. They liked, or they were used to, a tighter banjo head, a tighter sound. Tommy Thompson played a Remo plastic banjo head.
Like a bluegrass head, basically.
Oh, that you could bounce a quarter off. It was stretched so tight. Yeah. And so that was more what they were used to. And also I like a little bit brighter sound, and the Renaissance head allows that. I use a compensated bridge because I finger pick, and I like being able to stay in a little bit better tune going up the neck.
Yeah.
This banjo, I commissioned it in 1996. It took him about a year. He brought it to me in August of 1997 at Augusta. We were there in the parking lot at Augusta, and he brings me my new banjo. And one of the things about Kevin Enoch, is that he does incredible inlay, beautiful inlay work. And I didn't want any. And he'd send me phone messages and emails. You sure you don't want any inlay? Uh-huh. And I just want a plain banjo. Mm-hmm. And we get there, and he said, I had to do something. I said, What? He said, I had to put my name in red on the dowel stick.
Oh, so he inlaid that?
Cool. So it says Enoch, but it's in red. Yeah. And so the first night I got it, we're there, and we're playing outside. And, I still drank beer at that time. We were having a couple of beers and playing outside. And but I was trying to be good. I had the case open there on the lawn, and I'm trying to be good. And it's like, I have to go to bed because I've got to teach tomorrow. And so I put the banjo in the case. I show up at my class about 20 minutes early because I had some students who said, "Oh, we want to see the new banjo. We want to see the new banjo." So I got there. I opened up the banjo case. And my first thought was, wait a minute, I didn't think that Bob did inlay on this banjo. Because it was like the tree of life all the way up the banjo neck. And then I looked, and there were dead slugs in the banjo case. The varnish was still new enough that it killed them. Oh, but they slimed my new banjo, and I must have sounded like a squirrel, like, and so, at the break, I cleaned it off with a paper towel as much as I could. My friend Bob Smokula brought a hand-lettered jar that said "Slug Be Gone." Yeah. It was just polish, and he took the strings off right quick. He cleaned it and gave it back to me, but I still have that "Slug Be Gone" little jar. It was very sweet. But yeah.
Yeah, that's making me like squeamish hearing about it. That sounds disgusting.
It was not pretty, but
So you said it didn't. The neck you have has inlay. What am I missing here?
Well, he does like beautiful griffins and
okay. So
yeah,
this is like the understated version.
Yeah, I've
okay.
got some position dots.
Okay.
And a star because anything he does, but nothing on the headstock.
Right.
He does these beautiful custom pieces.
Uh-huh. Was that now? I'm familiar with Kevin Enoch, but maybe I don't know his history. It seems like that must have been one of his very early ones. Was that?
He used to work at Goose Acres and went out on his own, probably in the late '80s, early '90s.
Okay.
My friends in the scene started showing up with his banjos, and I thought, boy, they sound great and they look great. He blends form and function as well as any banjo maker I know. But
yeah, he's excellent.
That said, we're in the age of great instrument makers.
Mm-hmm.
My guitar is it's a pre-war guitar company guitar, and they recreate iconic Gibson and Martin instruments from the pre-World War II.
Sure.
I play a 1949 J45, and the neck it's perfect for me.
Yeah.
So they took measurements. I was on the road with a different guitar for a while. They took measurements and
gave you a
copy of my old guitar.
And as far as you're concerned, they did
hit
a great job
out of the park.
Yeah, that's cool. So I think one last question: what would you recommend people listen to if they want to dive into the banjo stylings of Joe Newberry? Is there a particular recording that you are maybe most proud of or is most demonstrative of your style?
They can hear Compton and Newberry live. They can hear an album I did with, dating myself, a CD I did with April Verch called Going Home.
Yeah.
They can find, they can find sound clips of it and online. Big Medicine. I played with a band called Big Medicine.
I ain't got no use for your red rocking chair. I ain't got no honey baby now. I ain't got no sugar baby now. It's all I can do. It's all I can say. Take it to your mama next payday. Take it to your mama next payday. Who rocked the cradle? Who'll sing my song?
And we played basically whatever we wanted. And so we would play some early bluegrass. We would play old time. I would play clawhammer banjo against bluegrass tunes.
Cool.
And folks can visit me. I have a YouTube channel, and I've got a whole playlist of Newberry banjo and.
Well, to that end,
Yeah.
go ahead and plug yourself. Give the websites, and because I assume that'll have like tour dates and opportunities to purchase some of this stuff. So go ahead and give the stuff.
I'm at joenewberry.biz, joenewberry.biz. I will tell you that I'm the world's worst at plugging in gigs, so I'm behind on that. But they can always follow me on Twitter at Joe Newberry, and I've always got stuff going on there. And I'm on Facebook, not as much these days. Facebook's it's weird,
A little problematic
it's
in
a
some
little
ways.
yes.
Yeah.
But I'm findable.
Yeah.
I'm findable.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with me. And it's been a blast at camp here. I'm looking forward to the last whatever we have left.
Thank you so
Day
much.
and a half or so.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, much appreciated.
All right, goodbye, good luck, God bless you. Don't worry too much about nothing, because everything ain't going to be all right no how.
We'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We heard some sound clips in this episode, and in order, they were Fly Around My Pretty Little Miss by Mike Compton and Joe Newberry, Gray Eagle from a live recording of Pete McMahon at the 1993 Missouri State Fair, Ships in the Clouds by Kathy Barton and Dave Para, Rebel Raid by Adam Hurt, Rocky Island by Mike Compton and Joe Newberry, Jericho by Joe Newberry and April Verch, and then finally Red Rocking Chair by Big Medicine. Thank you once again to the Patreon supporters of the show. That's Matthew Atkinson and Carol Rahak. Go to patreon.com/banjopodcast to support the show yourself and receive amazing rewards in return. Email me at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And everyone take care. I will see you all next time.